We're back continuing this great discussion with Craig Smith, former presidential speechwriter. So Craig, you were at the conventions, you worked for Walter Cronkite, and how did you become a presidential speechwriter?
Well, I had no intention of becoming one. I finished my PhD. I taught at San Diego State for 4 years and then moved to the University of Virginia. They kind of bought me away. And one day I was lecturing at the University of North Carolina as a guest lecturer in the morning, and President Ford came to speak at a luncheon. And I went to the speech, and I thought it was dreadful. And so I went back to Charlottesville, to the University of Virginia. I couldn't sleep that night, so I wrote a critique of the speech, a very constructive, polite critique, and I sent it to the President of the United States, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C.
And you signed it as a faculty member?
Yeah, as a professor of communication studies at the University of Virginia.
And here's some comments I had about the speech that I heard you give just recently.
Yeah, and there had been trouble in the speechwriting department at the White House, and which I didn't know about, and I got a call, and they said, would you be interested in coming up for an interview? And so that's America, folks. I mean, that you can write a letter to the president and get an interview.
That's I not
only got the interview, but I got the job. And so I left the University of Virginia and became a speechwriter for the President of the United States.
That is an only in America story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And tell us about your experience writing speeches for the president. First of all, what kind of person was President Ford?
He was a very kind man, much brighter than the press gave him credit for. After all,
well, Chevy Chase did a number on him as a bumbler.
Chevy Chase made a name for himself on Saturday Night Live, which hurt the president's reputation. But here's a guy who went to Yale Law School and finished in the top third of the class while coaching the football team.
So he can't be...
right.
Yeah.
He was just tall. He was a former football player, and he bumped his head and stuff like that. But the first speech I was assigned was to the Southern Baptist Convention meeting in Norfolk, Virginia. So you had a Catholic writing for an Episcopalian president to speak in front of the Southern Baptist Convention. And I worked very hard on the speech, and it was interrupted by applause, which was very unusual for Ford. And then the Washington Post gave it a great review and said he hit it out of the park. And so suddenly I had credibility in the White House. And that's
now, there were several speechwriters,
There are
right?
five. There were five full-time speechwriters.
Full-time speechwriters writing speeches because the president's going to all kinds of different
everything
functions.
the president does is scripted. The president may decide not to use the script, but toasts,
but he has
awards,
that book with the...
Yeah, everything is
And do the speechwriters critique each other's work? Or is there a head speechwriter that filters that, or how does that work?
We did that. There was also a head speechwriter, and he was a counselor to the president, Robert Hartman, a wonderful man who edited behind us, or would give it back to us and say, rewrite it because you left this out or put this in.
And do you remember a couple of memorable speeches or memorable phrases that stick in your mind that you penned?
Well, I wrote during the bicentennial, which was 1976, I wrote the speech that the president gave at Valley Forge. And it talks about the soldiers of Washington coming there in their rag-bound feet and so on and so forth. It was a very dramatic speech. It got very good reviews. That was important. The team of us worked on his acceptance speech at the 1976 Republican convention. We did not know that we had the nomination until the first day of the convention, when we finally counted enough delegates on our side. So it was very dramatic.
It was between him and Reagan, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the president gave a speech that we had rehearsed in front of live cameras 5 times. So he was smoother than usual. He gave kind of the speech of a lifetime that he needed to. He began that speech by challenging his opponent, Jimmy Carter, to debates. In June, we were 33 points behind Carter. After the bicentennial speeches, we were 15 points behind Carter. After the acceptance speech, we were 5 points behind Carter. And after the first debate, the race was dead even. And then the president made a mistake in the second debate. And it reminded everybody
of was about the Iron Curtain.
The Iron Curtain, that the Polish people are not dominated by the Soviet Union. And so we lost a close election.
It just struck me that that your craft is invisible to the public because it's the president who's speaking. He doesn't say at the end, I want to thank Craig Smith for drafting this speech. So you're behind the scenes.
We're behind the scenes, most definitely, and you know, that's the way it works. You try to maximize the strengths of your client and minimize the weaknesses. I once wrote a speech for Mayor Clark of Long Beach, and he began the speech by saying, I didn't write this speech, Craig Smith did. And so if you don't like any of it, blame him, which had to be one of the most honest moments any politician's ever had.
That's adorable. What does it feel like to hear and see the president uttering words that you wrote?
Well, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. I had written for Walter Cronkite, and his words went to 20 million people. Now I was writing for the President of the United States, and his words were going to everybody in the country. And so it was a remarkable feeling. It was euphoric to write a speech and then see the president deliver it.
What was the attitude vis-a-vis the 5 speechwriters? Is it competitive or is it helpful? Do you affirmatively critique each other's work, or everyone's trying to be the number one of the 5? How does that work?
I think there was healthy competition, but one of the things I introduced once I got some clout after that Norfolk speech was to put 2 writers on every speech. And one of the things we tried to do was to make the speech have a consistent Ford style, which was not there before I came. You could tell that somebody different had written this speech compared to speech B. Now they were all kind of consistent, the language was consistent. He wanted to speak the language of the common man. He didn't want to be made into kind of phonily eloquent.
Pedantic.
Yeah, exactly. And so with 2 people on a speech, we could catch one another when we made a mistake.
So another set of eyes is always good.
Oh yeah, and rewrite. Franklin Roosevelt's major speeches went through 10, 12 drafts. You can see them at Hyde Park, where he marked them up.
The one phrase, and I know this is probably before you came aboard with President Ford, the one phrase that I remember is, I think, ladies and gentlemen, our long national nightmare is over after
Bob
Nixon.
Hartman wrote that for him. Yeah,
that was powerful.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Well, in the next segment, we want to dialogue with Craig about the strengths and weaknesses of the many different famous people he's worked for, and how you adjust the speech to fit their personality. Stay with us.
How do you like your chances the rest of the way?
I got no idea. But I do know that if we stay with Naples Rib Company, at least we won't go hungry.
Coach, what do you think about some of those questionable calls tonight?
Yeah, but if you want a sound call, I'd call Naples Rib Company. You can't miss on that call.
Then Naples Rib Company is part of your game plan?
There really is nothing more motivating than a great barbecue meal at Naples Rib Company.
Victory or not, Naples Rib Company, great game plan.
Founded in 1976, Polly's Gourmet Coffee is Southern California's most complete gourmet coffee store. Polly's has the best tasting coffee, freshly roasted every day right in the store, plus a wide selection of teas, an in-house bakery, espresso bar, patio dining, and more. We also offer Wi-Fi, free internet access for all of our customers. Our nationwide clientele agree, when it comes to coffee, there's only one name to remember, Polly's, 4606 East 2nd Street, welcoming you into Belmont Shore.
When I was a boy growing up in Italy, I had a dream to own my own store. I came to the United States and I worked hard as a tailor. Hi, I'm Umberto. I've been in Long Beach since 1960, carrying the finest quality men's clothing. It was a long way away, but styles are just around the corner. Umberto, 2141 Bellflower, Long Beach.